Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's South Carolina Writers Workshop webinar presentation featuring Joseph Gartrell and Jaime Muehl, the first-time novelist, letting editors in. You can ask questions using the chat feature. Let's get started. Jaime and Joe.
Hey, everybody. I'm Joe. This is Jaime.
Hi.
We run a little editing and writing company in Charleston, South Carolina called Muehl. We edit everything from novels, scripts, creative nonfiction, pretty much anything. I'm more of a developmental editor. Jaime is a copy editor primarily, though she can do some developmental editing herself. But anyway, what we're going to be talking about today is the importance of being comfortable with editors improving your work. So I'm a former journalist, and that taught me the importance of word economy. So that's something that I look for. It's one of my great passions is eliminating unnecessary words from sentences, and journalism taught me that. It also taught me how to allow editors to work on my projects and improve them. And I initially balked at it and would kind of push back, but it quickly became clear to me that without good editing, my work wasn't clear and sometimes was maybe a little bit poor because I was writing on tight deadlines and it was just essential. So it taught me to cherish what my editor does. So that's what I do now. So I work with a lot of we work with a lot of first-time novelists and screenwriters, and often when they get edits back from us, they respond with a little bit of anger. And that makes sense because, you know, if it's your first book, you've probably been working on it or thinking about working on it for years. So when you finally get it out there, you're probably a little bit hesitant, a little bit anxious, but you deep down think it's perfect.
It's your baby. You've spent all this time working on it, and then you've basically given birth to this word child, and it's yours. And when you get criticism of your child, you're a little bit defensive, which is understandable.
Right, yeah. So it does feel like your child, your offspring. So when somebody says, that baby's not that cute, it's understandable that you might get upset.
Mm-hmm.
But we're here to tell you that we are friendly people, right? Pretty clear. And when we work on projects, we genuinely have a passion for improving them. So, when I go through a novel the first time, it's not unlikely that I make thousands of changes. Thousands, rewrite, you know, a lot of sentences, tweaking. Almost every single sentence has at least some sort of correction in it. So people get this manuscript back and it looks like a monster to them with all the red in there and all the comments in the margins. But that is all done out of an appreciation for the work that exists and a strong desire to improve it. So it's tricky to learn how to let somebody get in there and just kind of soullessly restructure what you've been working on for maybe 5 years.
True. I'm just going to introduce myself quickly.
Yes.
I'm Jaime, and just give you a little bit of my background. I got my degree from Colby College in Maine in English and American literature. And then I went on and worked at Stanford as a research assistant, and then at Harvard also as a research assistant. And at Harvard, I got to work with a professor who wrote a lot of case studies, a lot of books in ethics and politics. So that was my first introduction into both writing writing for an audience and being published, and copy editing as well. And from there, I went and did some graduate work in English and American literature at NYU, and then moved down to Charleston. And I have been here where I met Joe at the History Press. He was an acquisitions editor, and I'm a copy editor. So I've had a lot of experience working with writers. A lot of our authors at the History Press are first-time authors, and a lot of them come in with a serious attachment to their work, which I completely understand, but it's also my job to kind of say, okay, your work's great, but let's make it even better. And so that's really what we're here to talk to you about, just kind of letting go of your attachment a little bit and having an open mind when you get the edit back and it's bleeding and you're freaking out. Kind of put it aside for a second, breathe, then come back to it with as open a mind as you can, and look at the suggestions that we make and, you know, kind of say, all right, am I am I against this? Am I having a reaction to this because of some strong emotional attachment, or is it because, you know, I really think that this sentence is perfect the way it is, you know? So you kind of have to weigh what your reaction is, whether it's emotional or whether it's actually logical and there's a specific reason for you to not want to take the suggestion. So anyway.
And Jamie and I talk about this all the time. And ultimately, I like to remind all of my writers, and Jamie does as well, that we are simply people. We're not word gods. The final say is with the writer. Absolutely. Everything we do is a recommendation, is a suggestion. It's a well thought out suggestion, but at the same time,
it's your book.
It's
your ultimately book. Your book. Your name's going to be on it. This is your baby, and people are going to, you know, read the book, and your name is the one that they're going to associate with it. So we understand if something that we say just really doesn't feel right to you, then, you know, by all means, this is your book, and we're not going to argue with you on every little point. There are some things, obviously, I'm a little bit of a grammar Nazi, and there's a reason for that. You know,
we need those.
We don't want you publishing your book and having, you know, silly little errors in there that just kind of make you look less professional. So I will argue with you on grammar points, but on other things that are just kind of stylistic or opinion, that sort of thing, you know, my suggestions are there for you to take or not take. It's up to you. It's your baby.
And this reminds me of something that I often see in first-time novelists' books, a lot of flowery prose. I feel like a lot of people feel like they have to prove themselves as a writer by just cramming the manuscript with it's kind of a word dump. I've been working on this book forever. I have all these words, and I'm going to just kind of disgorge them all to prove that I have this cache of words that I'm sitting on, and I'm eloquent and all of this. But the best writing is really concise. It's clear. So what I do, I spend a lot of my time eliminating those kind of flourishes. And sometimes, you know, flowery can be kind of nice.
But a flourish is a lot more effective if most of the writing is clear, concise, and then the flourish is there to make a point.
Right.
So, and that's what we kind of aim to help you do, kind of clear up a lot of the excessive, you know, superfluous flourishes, and then, you know, really make your point, bring it home with those special occasional flourishes.
Yeah, so flowery prose is something that appears often in first-time novelists' work. Redundancy is another pretty serious issue, and that makes sense. If you're writing a 300-page novel and you haven't written anything that's more than a few pages in the past, it makes sense that you're sitting down and working on it diligently and just kind of grinding away to make sure that you get your word count up. So it makes sense if you kind of lose track of what you've said previously, if your structure is not sound. So you really do need somebody to go through it and analyze it and get rid of the things that maybe the reader has already learned going, you know, in other portions of the book. So flowery prose, redundancy, and then lack of focus is another major concern. So these are things that I pretty much invariably see in every novelist's first work.
I would also add getting very attached to a certain word. I see this a lot, especially with first-time writers. There's a specific word that they will just use over and over, and they don't even realize that they're doing it. Sometimes it's something as simple as, you know, he realized instead of he said, he realized, he thought, you know. So just kind of be careful of like which words you're choosing, and if you see the same word popping up over and over again, maybe go back and change a few of those. But that's also what your editors are for. That's what we do. We kind of point those out and say, hey, you're obsessed with this word. Let's find other words. So.
Yeah, I edited a novel earlier this year, and the writer, there were a lot of happy people in it, and the writer would always use the word beams to describe somebody who just lit up. And I compiled all of the beams, and I found that there were 13 pages of just the word beams in this manuscript.
But that's, I mean, you'd be surprised at how often that happens. Like, it's smart that you actually compiled them all, because there have been some times where I've wanted to do that and just not at the time, but it's amazing. And you think, you know, just using it once on a page, maybe it wouldn't be as noticeable, but it definitely becomes very noticeable.
Yes, it does. Yeah, so anyway, I feel like maybe we should talk a little bit about the difference between developmental editing and copy editing, if we haven't, to flesh that out a little bit, and proofreading. So the first step is the developmental edit. So I often will be the first person to read somebody's novel. And I do I'm in there in every single sentence, making everything as strong as I possibly can. So really, when I get a novel, I will often spend, say it's standard length, 90,000 words, I will spend about 3 weeks working on it full time, and do everything in my power to improve it. And when I'm done, then I'll sit down with the writer. I will help that writer incorporate my suggestions. I will clarify things that maybe weren't, perfectly clear in the margins of my comments. So that's a really big process. That's when the really big things happen. And then Jaime comes in.
Right. So he sat down and he is looking a little bit at, grammar and language and that sort of thing, more for a sense of this is a run-on sentence, or there's too much here, I'm going to trim it down. But he's also looking at the ideas and the story structure and the characters and the plot. And he's really taking in all of that and seeing how it fits together and how he can improve it. When it gets to me as a copy editor, in theory, it's already had a developmental edit, or it doesn't need one, which is great, but rare. And so I'm going in and I'm looking a little bit at those things just to make sure there's nothing that stands out, like, oh, you use this name for the character and then 3 pages later it's a different name, that sort of thing. But I'm not really focused so much on the story. I'm going line by line and I'm reading it for grammar, I'm reading it for spelling, I'm reading it for style. Usually for fiction books, it's loosely based on Chicago style. Most publishers do that. At the History Press where I work, we use the Chicago Manual style. So I'm editing for that. Consistency, all sorts of things. And that's what I go through line by line, word by word, very, very technical editing. And then after that, hopefully it'll have a solid proofread, and that's the final step. And that's basically somebody just sits down and reads it and looks for typos, looks for any errors that maybe the copy editor has missed or the author has missed. But at that point, there should be no need to worry about changing anything as far as the plot goes or the character development, that sort of thing. It should be pretty clean at that point. So you're just picking out actual last minute errors. Mm-hmm. So those are the 3 steps that I think any good novel needs, at least 1 round of each. A lot of times you'll go through 2, 3, 4 rounds of developmental editing, and then a couple rounds of copy editing, and then a proofread. So it just kind of depends on where your book is, what kind of shape it's in the beginning, and what it needs.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. So Jaime, I've just written a novel, and it's about my childhood. I've wanted to write it for about 20 years, and I've poured every ounce of my creative ability into it. And I've just sent it off to you, and you've edited it, and it feels like maybe you've kind of torn it to shreds when I get it back and I see all the corrections you made. So how should I respond to that?
First of all, that's not my intention. I may have looked like I've torn it to shreds, but I've only as a copy editor improved the language. It has nothing to do with you as a person or the emotional intent that you've gotten into your book.
Because it feels like a personal attack.
It will feel like a personal attack, absolutely. But that is not, as an editor, that is not my intent. I want to make this book as great as it can be. And then when we present it to your readers, I want them to actually get that emotional quality that you've poured into it out of it without being distracted by anything, any excess language or any mistakes or errors, that sort of thing. So I would say, you'll get it back from me and you will freak out because it's bleeding red and it's scary. And I would say, look it over, breathe, let you have those feelings. I mean, it's okay to feel attacked, you're going to, but then put it aside for a couple of days and just kind of let it linger over there, do other things, distract yourself, and then come back to it. And when you come back to it, I would say come back to it with as open a mind as you can. And remember that it really isn't a personal attack, even if at first it felt personal. We're just trying to help you make a better book.
So you're my friend.
I'm your friend.
Oh, okay. Right.
I am your good friend, and I am just trying to help you.
Okay. Yeah. So when I'm wrapping up my 3 weeks of editing and I send my edits back to the writer, I'm sure pretty much invariably, I think the response is anger. And then often I won't even hear from that writer, not a thank you or anything, for about 3 weeks. And then pretty much across the board, I'll hear from the writer and they'll say, I was really kind of mad initially, But then I took a second, I read through it a couple of times, and then I felt very fortunate that you spent as much time as you did improving this. And I see that you're pretty much right. And it's several times I've had writers say, I used every single one of your suggestions. And I'm like, all 4,000 of them? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I've had that happen
I don't know
too.
if I'm that good, but I'll take it.
Right. And I would say, whenever I send an edit to an author, and I send a couple edits a week to authors, most of them new authors, I always try in my emails to them to say positive things about their work, because I mean, just having written it is a huge feat, and I haven't done that yet. I'm a writer, and I'm the queen of not finishing anything and everything that I start.
It's hard to do.
So I'm really impressed that you can just finish it. And so I always try to, make a point of saying like how much I appreciated reading that, how, all of the strengths in that book, and then kind of remind them that everything that I'm saying, all of the red in that they're suggestions, and they're not by no means an attack on you, or me saying I'm better than you, because I'm not. I've done this a lot. I've done it for a really long time, and I do it every day. And I've just seen ways and learned ways over the years to make things tighter and trimmer. And plus, I'm not attached to your book the way you are, so I am an objective reader, and I try to remind them of that too.
We are impassive.
Exactly, we're impassive readers. Impassive in one sense, but also just as committed to making it, a good piece of work as you are.
We have a great passion for improving any writing project.
Right. And I have to say, a lot of times I'll get an initial response from an author, and it sometimes isn't very nice, which I completely understand, and I don't take it personally. Sometimes they'll be like, wow, like you just ripped my book apart. I'm overwhelmed. I don't even know how to look at this because there's so much red, and I totally understand. And I just write back and say, again, they're suggestions, and I thought your book was great. And, just put it aside for a second, and then take a look at it. And inevitably, not one time every single time I have received another email about a week later from the author saying thank you.
My head
and
has
apologizing.
cleared.
And just saying, I'm really sorry for initially overreacting. Like it's overwhelming.
We respond very well to anger. We're used to it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't take it personally. I used to when I first started. I did take it personally, but just like the writer, like we're editors.
Yeah, that's what I did as a journalist. I worked at the repository in Canton, Ohio it's a daily print newspaper. And I don't know what just happened on my computer. But anyway, I did that for a couple of years out of grad school. And for the first, I would say 6 months, I would be upset every single time I saw the paper the next day and saw the changes. But then it quickly became clear to me that, wow, I really need that. And I developed a really close relationship with my editors there. And I came to see them really as allies. And I would have cold sweats thinking about, what if this particular editor leaves? I mean, this person knows my work. I need them, and really the paper needs it. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes over here. Obviously, we're following them closely, but yeah. So anyway, the editing process it's a lovely collaborative thing that I came to really appreciate just from my time as a newspaper man. And it's something that I love to do. When I am first introduced to a new writer and his or her work, I always say, first off, no matter what happens with the editing process, you have achieved something really great. Because every writer dreams of writing that one project. And if you've done that, then you have knocked it out of the park. That's already a home run. So let's see what we can do with that home run, and see if we can maybe add a little distance to it, which is unnecessary because it's already over the fence. But I mean, if you're gonna hit a home run, you might as well hit a 500-footer.
Okay.
So anyway, and I really feel like if we all spent a portion of our days on an artistic endeavor, that we would all be happier people and the world would be a better place. I really believe that. I mean, you're right, because you have a need for it. And if you've completed something, then hats off and thank you for sharing it. That's how I feel about it. And so at Wordmuehl, wordmuehl.com, we really appreciate when writers come by with their work, and we consider it an honor. And we do absolutely everything we can to make sure that work is as good as it possibly can be.
Absolutely. I should also mention that at Wordmuehl, we also do book design. So once your book has been edited and proofread, we can also make it look really great too.
Yeah, internal and cover design.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the gist of it.
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it.
Any questions?
Oh,
Did you mute?
so,
You muted her.
did I? Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, we're having some tech problems.
Having some tech problems.
We're better with books and words than.
Okay, I have questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I get a trial edit? Do you give like a sample?
Yeah, we do. So I will always edit between 3 and 5 pages for free, just so the editor can see my style. Because if somebody commits to me as an editor, I want them to feel very confident about what they're getting into. Because every editor really is different. So yes, I do. I gladly do a sample for every writer I work with.
As do I. At Word Muehl, we will always give you a sample before we have you commit to us, because we want to make sure that we're the right fit.
And you mentioned you pretty much use the Chicago Manual of Style. Do you provide an author with a style sheet?
Not always. I can if they request it, if that's helpful to them. In the longer, more technical books, really factual books, I definitely would insist on it. It's sort of up to the author and what we kind of agree on.
We should note that Jaime still works with the History Press. It's a nonfiction, local, and regional interest publishing house in Charleston. So she's doing a lot of history editing.
Okay, I have another question. How many people do you work with at any given time? You mentioned, Joe, that you spent like 3 weeks on something.
Yes. So if I'm editing a novel of standard length, 90 to 115,000 words, I really do. I dive into it as a full-time job. But I can handle pretty much 2 novels simultaneously. And Jaime, you're probably about the same, right?
I would say similar. Yeah, a couple novels simultaneously. It kind of depends on how long they are, how much work they need. Again, it really depends on the book themselves.
But yeah, so we're both comfortable with handling 2 full-length manuscripts at any given time. But we also edit a lot of short stories, screenplays, plays, things like that. So at the same time, I'm often kind of working on
smaller jobs in between.
Right.
What do you love about your job?
Oh, so I really have a passion for eliminating unnecessary words, and it comes from my time as a print journalist. So when you're a print journalist, you have a section of print that you have to fill, and that the size of that piece of the paper is not going to change. So you have to write for that block. So it made me really good at eliminating unnecessary words, and I absolutely love it. Every time I can sit down with a sentence and make it 4 words shorter and a little bit tighter and clearer, I mean, it gives me a ton of pleasure, and that's really my favorite thing. Aside from working with the writers, because I do have deep admiration.
Absolutely, and I would say working with the writers is one of my favorite things. And I love books, and I love the English language. I am such a geek when it comes to English language. So I love hearing different voices, working with people's different voices, and helping them make their voice shine. That's really just what makes me so happy every day coming to work as an editor. So.
Okay, here's a question for each of you. What types of books are your specialties?
That is a tough question.
I don't really know if I have one. I have a deep admiration for first-time novelists and screenwriters. So working with them gives me a ton of pleasure. Just because I keep mentioning my deep admiration for anybody who sees a project to fruition, because I know how difficult it is. So that's what I enjoy the most. So not really a genre or any sort of type of book or script. I love that first timer. That's what I love the most.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, I've worked for about 9 years with this history publisher. So obviously, I maybe specialize a little bit in history books, local and regional history books, historical fiction. We also do a lot of haunted books, so I'm a big fan of ghost stories, the paranormal, that sort of thing. We also do true crime, and I love I love those books. So that has gotten me interested in kind of mysteries and suspense books as well. But like Joe, I mean, I love reading. I read a vast array of different kinds of genres, and I love working on all sorts of different projects. So while I specialize in historical fiction and history books, definitely welcome all different kinds of books.
And I also love it on occasion when I find a writer with a really unique voice,
yes,
or a character with just a character that really lives off the page. So I often tell my writers that you have a good character when you can imagine that character living outside of the book. And when I find characters like that, it thrills me to no end. And when I find writers with unique voices, I get very excited about that too. So,
or with new takes on kind of like romance novels are so formulaic, but if a writer comes in with a new take on the formula, it really excites me. So yeah.
Thank you. How do you edit? Do you love, Microsoft Word, or is it Red Pen?
Microsoft Word. I find it very easy to use. It's a great program. I've tried some others, but it's always on my computer.
Yeah, I copy edit on Microsoft Word. If I proofread, I will print it out and use a Red Pen. I just find it's easier with the last round, when everything should be pretty clean, to find those errors. They jump off the page more.
And I usually edit alone. Sometimes I go to coffee shops, but I try not to, because when I edit, I read out loud. And I always advise my writers to do that when they're writing, because if you're reading it aloud and all of a sudden you're stumbling a little bit, that means that you need to do something about that. Sure. This needs to be addressed. So I'll be at a coffee shop with headphones in, listening to jazz usually, and mumbling. So I try not to look too crazy. So, but that's a big part of my editing process, is actually reading it out loud.
Great. We do have viewers who keep logging on and logging out, apparently.
They're not showing their interest.
I have a feeling that people had trouble getting on. If anybody is here who would like to ask a question, just type it in the chat feature.
And we would love to hear about what you're working on. Specifically, if you have general questions about editing and writing, we'd love to hear about those too. But if people are having a difficult time getting through to us here, they can always reach out to us on our Facebook page or wordmuehl.com. And we're really quick about responding to.
Great. Well, I have no more questions. You answered a lot of my questions in the beginning of the presentation. So seeing no more questions, I guess we'll wrap it up.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
I want to thank you very much, and know that a lot of people across the state are going to be seeing this.
Great.
Yeah. It's a little free advertising.
Great. Well, it's great. It's been a pleasure.
So thank you very much. I'm going to mute both of us for a couple of minutes and put up the links.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.